I'm Liam, 32, a software engineer in Phoenix. The day I turned the key to my new home, I felt a rush of calm I hadn't known in years. My sanctuary, my rules. For 3 seconds it was perfect. Then the air shifted. I stepped inside and my stomach dropped. My mom and sister Chloe stood in the middle of the room. A copied key dangled from my mom's fingers like it was her birthright. "Look, Chloe," she said brightly. "This living room will be perfect for your baby shower." The peace I'd bought with every overtime shift evaporated in an instant. The house wasn't theirs. But in that moment, it felt like I was still just a guest in my own life. The air left my lungs. My sanctuary, the place I had dreamed of, was already claimed. They weren't guests. They were settlers. On the counter lay my mom's planner, pages crammed with scribbles, Chloe's nursery, living room renovations, guest list baby shower. I picked up the copied key, its weight heavier than steel. "How did you get this?" My voice shook, not from fear but from disbelief. My mom didn't even glance at me. She smoothed the page in her planner, calm as if she owned the walls. "Your father and I thought it would be better for you to live with us," she said. Then, without irony, "This house is perfect for Chloe's growing family." It wasn't just intrusion. It was erasure. My dream home had been rewritten before I even unpacked a box. Growing up, our house was a tale told in double standards. On my birthdays, the celebrations were quiet, almost clinical. A store-bought cake with stiff, plastic candles. A gift card slid across the table, always the same video game store. My dad would hand it to me with that rehearsed line, "Liam, you need to learn the value of $1. You have to earn your way in this world." But Chloe's birthdays, they were extravaganzas. Balloons crowding the ceiling, a live band shaking the backyard, a professional clown twisting balloons, and yes, one year, a pony ride for her and her friends. Nothing was too much. No cost too high. The contrast was glaring. She was celebrated, adored, elevated. I was reminded that my role was responsibility, that my worth came only through hard work and restraint. It was the unwritten law of our family. I would earn everything. Chloe would inherit everything. Even as a child, I could feel it. I wasn't being prepared for life. I was being positioned as the background, the support beam to hold up her spotlight. It hit me years later, in the quiet of my own apartment, when I opened that box of old records. Buried in the folders were ledgers, neat columns of numbers, my life reduced to transactions. Every month there it was, basement rent, Liam. A sum that had nearly broken me when I was juggling classes and 2 part-time jobs. I remembered scraping together those dollars, handing them over like proof of my worth, all while eating dollar menu meals just to get by. To my parents, it had been a joke. "Everyone has to pay their way," my dad had said with a smirk. But then I turned the page. Chloe's ledger told a different story. College tuition, covered. Apartment in Boston, covered. Extras, trips, shopping, deposits covered without hesitation. Not a single entry marked as her burden. No rent. No reminders about the value of $1. Seeing it spelled out in black and white was like a punch to the chest. It wasn't just favoritism, it was strategy. They had cast me as the responsible one, the tenant, the investment. Chloe was the princess, the one whose life they were building at any cost. The money mattered, yes. But what mattered more was what it revealed. Respect had never been equal. Love had never been equal. They had planned it this way, brick by brick, receipt by receipt. My sacrifices had been invisible, hers had been celebrated. That night, staring at the numbers, I realized the poison I'd lived with for years had a paper trail. It wasn't my imagination, it was their design. After that humiliating discovery, a fire lit inside me. I was no longer just working to live. I was working to escape. I took on a second job, then a third, coding late into the night, fueled by coffee and a burning resolve. My social life became non-existent. Friends would invite me out, and I'd have to say no. Every dollar I earned, every hour I worked, was a brick in the foundation of my future home. It was a trade-off I was more than willing to make. I watched my bank account grow. It wasn't just a number. It was a score. It was a tangible measure of my independence, a giant middle finger to the family who said I was a charity case. Every deposit felt like a small victory. The months turned into a year, then two. My vision was a home, not just a house, a place where I was in control, a place where my key was the only key, a place where peace wasn't a temporary guest, but a permanent resident. I was packing up my old room, boxing up memories. At the bottom of a dusty trunk, I found a family photo album. My finger traced the faded cover, a wave of nostalgia washing over me. I flipped to a page from a high school graduation party. The photo was of my parents and Chloe. My mom was beaming, her arm around my sister's shoulders. But something was wrong. Where I should have been, there was just a blank, jagged space. A crude cut with a pair of scissors. I had literally been cut out of the picture. My achievement, my graduation, was deemed unworthy of being in the family photo. I remembered that day. I was so proud. I walked across the stage, my head held high. But my parents' lens wasn't focused on me. It was focused on Chloe's lavish graduation celebration the year before. This wasn't an accident. This was an intentional act of erasure, a physical manifestation of how I was seen in my own family. I wasn't a member. I was an afterthought, something to be edited out. The paper cut on the photo was sharper than any knife. It didn't just slice the image. It sliced through my hope of ever being truly seen, of ever being truly accepted. It was a wound I didn't even know I had. The bitterness was like a poison. It had been festering for years, pushed down, ignored. But seeing that photo, that jagged, cruel line where I should have been, it all came rushing back. It wasn't just about the money. It was about every single time they said, "Chloe's so busy, you should help." Every time my accomplishments were met with a shrug. Every time I was told to be the bigger person. All those years I'd convinced myself it wasn't personal. That's just how they were. But this was personal. This was a deliberate act to make me invisible, to erase me from the family narrative. The quiet boy who accepted his lot in life was gone. In his place stood a man fueled by a quiet rage, a cold, calculated fury. This wasn't just a home anymore. It was a battlefield, a final stand. The jagged cut in that photo was the final straw. It wasn't just a physical wound, it was a symbol. A symbol of every time they told me I wasn't enough. It was a wake-up call I had been avoiding my whole life. Buying this home wasn't just about financial independence. It was about proving to myself that I was worthy of having my own space, that I was worthy of a life that was mine and mine alone. This house was more than real estate. It was a declaration that I would no longer be defined by the roles they assigned me. I wasn't the responsible one. I was just Liam. For years, I'd lived my life as a reaction to them, a desperate attempt to earn their approval. But that chapter was over. I was finally ready to start writing my own story, with a pen, not a pair of scissors. My hope wasn't a fragile thing anymore. It was a solid foundation, built with every extra shift I worked, every penny I saved. It was a tangible thing I could hold in my hands, the key to my own front door. I was no longer the boy who was cut out of the picture. I was the man who was building a new one. A picture of a life I chose for myself, filled with peace, purpose, and a home that was truly mine. I walked through the empty rooms, the afternoon light streaming in. This wasn't just a house. It was a blank canvas, a sanctuary of my own making, a place where the air was mine to breathe, and the silence was mine to fill. I ran my hand along the wall, imagining my own photos here, not of family who cut me out, but of friends who stood by me. a bookshelf filled with my favorite novels, a kitchen where I could cook without judgment. The thought of a quiet Sunday morning, just me and a cup of coffee, felt like a luxury. No yelling, no unsolicited advice, no demands. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the gentle whir of the ceiling fan. I was building a life, not just a house. This was a physical declaration of my independence, a monument to my own resilience. Every corner of this place screamed, "This is mine. I earned this, and I am enough." The key in my hand wasn't just metal. It was a symbol. A symbol of every late-night coding session, every sacrificed weekend, every dollar I saved. It was the key to my freedom, a key that nobody else would ever have. This home was my answer. My quiet, unyielding response to a lifetime of being told I was a burden. A life of my own making. And in this moment, in this house, I felt an unshakable sense of purpose. The air in the living room was thick with a new energy. Chloe held a measuring tape, her face a mask of focus. "This is perfect, Mom," she said. "We can put the baby crib right here." My mom was scribbling notes on a pad. She looked at me, a blank expression on her face. "Oh, Liam," she said, as if I were a ghost. "We just wanted to get a head start on the plans. It's for the best." I stood frozen, the key to my house still in my hand. They were talking about plans, my house. They were making decisions without me, in a space I had bled and sacrificed for. Chloe looked up, a sweet smile on her face. "This is great, Liam. Once we knock down this wall, we can combine the living room and what would have been your bedroom. It'll be a huge open space." They were already mentally tearing down my walls, not just the physical ones, but the emotional boundaries I had worked so hard to build. This was not a visit. This was a hostile takeover, a declaration of war. I finally found my voice. "What are you doing?" "This is my house." My mom sighed, as if I were a difficult child. "Liam, don't be selfish. We're a family. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is ours." That phrase, "What's yours is ours," I had heard it my whole life. It was their mantra, their justification for every boundary they had ever crossed, every dollar they had ever taken. I felt a cold knot of fury tighten in my stomach. I grabbed my mom's phone from the table. The screen lit up with a text message from my dad. My hands were shaking. I shouldn't be doing this, but I couldn't stop myself. The message read, "Everything is going as planned. The realtor confirmed the house can be a rental for now before we fully convert it for Chloe's family." "This is perfect." I scrolled up. There were months of messages, emails to realtors, a detailed renovation plan for a nursery. They weren't just visiting. This was a long-term, calculated scheme. A text from my mom to Chloe read, "Don't worry, honey. We'll simply let Liam think it's his until you're ready for the move." He's so naive. It's for the best. I found a text from my dad to a financial advisor. "We need to make sure Liam stays close. We can't have him running off. The investment needs to be secured for Chloe." The documents were all there. The names of the lawyers, the dates, the fake rental contracts they were going to use. Every piece of paper was a nail in my coffin of independence. I saw a message from my mom to her friend, "We're doing this for Chloe's future. It's our responsibility as parents. Liam will understand eventually. We know what's best for him." The photo, the rent, the gifts, it all made sense. This wasn't just a simple case of favoritism. This was a systematic, calculated betrayal. My life was a chessboard, and I was just a pawn. I finally understood. My worth to them was purely transactional. I was a resource to be managed, a problem to be solved, never a person to be loved. The truth was colder than any lie. I looked at my mom and Chloe again. They were smiling, planning their future, on top of the life I had built. The audacity of it all was breathtaking. My quiet rage turned into a burning resolve. This was not a mistake. It was a conscious choice. They didn't see me. They saw an opportunity. My home was just a means to an end. It was time to show them I was not a pawn in their game. I clenched my jaw. The betrayal was a physical ache in my chest, but with it came a clarity I had never had before. The path forward was clear. I wouldn't just fight for my home, I would fight for my life. Every sacrifice I made, every late-night coding session, every dollar saved, it was all for this. For this moment of truth. My hard work was about to be weaponized. The betrayal was a physical ache, a cold knot in my stomach, but it was also a fire. I walked into the kitchen, a quiet storm brewing inside me. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady as I scrolled through Google for a locksmith. My mom was still chattering with Chloe, pointing to a spot on the wall. They were so oblivious, so convinced of their own righteousness. I found a 24-hour service, my thumb hovering over the call button. This was it, the point of no return, the first step to reclaiming my life. I hit call. The words tasted like freedom. I spoke in a low voice, almost a whisper. I need all the locks changed immediately. The locksmith arrived in a plain white van, a no-nonsense professional. I ushered him inside, keeping a careful eye on my mom and Chloe, who were now arguing over paint swatches in the backyard. He worked quickly and silently, replacing the locks on the front door, the back door, and the garage. The old locks, symbols of their access, were dropped into a small pouch. The clicks of the new bolts sliding into place felt like the sound of a jail cell door closing. But this time, I was the one locking the door from the outside. It was a liberation. Once the locksmith was gone, I moved on to the next step. I had a wireless security camera system delivered a few days prior. I didn't know why I bought it at the time, but now it felt like providence. I installed one camera for the front door and another for the backyard, making sure they had a clear view of any future intruders. The app was simple to set up. I named the system Fortress Liam. It was a small, almost childish act of defiance, but it made me feel invincible. This was a digital wall, a new boundary they couldn't knock down with a sweet smile and a copied key. I walked back into the living room, a new weight in my hand, a keychain with a dozen identical keys. My mom was holding up a paint swatch, a perfect smile on her face. "What do you think of this color for Chloe's nursery?" she asked, as if I were a design consultant. I just smiled, a real smile this time, full of quiet confidence. "I think you should leave now," I said. "This house is not a nursery, and the old key you have won't work anymore." The smile vanished from her face. I had finally found my voice. The silence in the house was deafening. It was a beautiful sound. For the first time, my sanctuary was truly mine. Their footsteps, their voices, their judgments, all of it was outside. I walked to the front door, the new lock gleaming. It wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a promise. A promise that no one could ever walk into my life without my permission again. This was my final stand. A declaration of independence I had been too afraid to make my entire life. I had to face the fear of being alone, because being with them was a greater fear. I picked up my phone. I had to do what I had been putting off for years. I went to my contacts and found my mom's number. The words flashed on the screen, "Block this number." My finger hovered over the button. The years of guilt, manipulation, and conditional love flashed before my eyes. All the times I was told to be the bigger person. I pressed the button. It felt like a physical release. Then I blocked Chloe, my dad, their close friends, anyone who was a part of their narrative. I was no longer a character in their story. I was the author of my own. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't about drama. It was about peace. It was about severing the chains that had held me for decades. It was about building a new life, brick by brick. For years I had been an echo of their expectations. My career, my home, my life, it was all a desperate attempt to earn their approval. That chapter was finally closed. I walked through the house again. This time I didn't see a blank canvas. I saw a future. A place where I could be myself, authentically and completely, without any judgment. The air no longer felt heavy. It felt light. I looked out the window at the Phoenix sunset. The colors were vibrant. It was the first time I had truly noticed them. I had spent my entire life trying to be seen by them. But the truth was, they had never seen me. They had only ever seen a projection of their own desires. My revenge wasn't about making them see. It was about making myself see, seeing my own worth, my own strength, my own right to a life of my own. I was finally writing the script for my own life. A story where the main character wasn't a pawn. He was the king. He was the hero. I took a deep breath. It was a new kind of air. Clean. Uncontaminated. The first deep breath of a new life. A life of my own making. The house was empty. The silence was golden. It was the beginning of my true life. The life I had earned. The life they would never be able to touch again. This wasn't just a physical separation. It was an emotional and spiritual divorce. I was divorcing myself from a toxic family narrative. The past didn't define me. The future was unwritten. The only thing that mattered was the present. The present moment of liberation. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a survivor. A fighter. And this home, this quiet, peaceful space was my trophy. I walked into my new bedroom. I saw the empty closet, the blank walls. This was my canvas. I could fill it with anything I wanted, my own story. I opened the blinds. The Phoenix sun was strong but welcoming. It wasn't the harsh sun of the desert. It was the sun of a new day, my new day. The freedom was a living, breathing thing. It was in the air. It was in the silence. It was in the key in my hand. My revenge was complete. It was a life. My mom's perfect smile evaporated. Chloe's mouth fell open in shock. "What do you mean the key won't work?" My mom stammered, her voice a mix of disbelief and fear. "Liam, this is ridiculous. It's just a joke, right? The key from your dad? What's wrong with it?" "A joke." My voice was steady and cold. "Is it a joke that you were planning to steal my house? Is it a joke that you were going to use it for Chloe's baby shower? That you were going to kick me out?" My mom's face went pale, a sickening gray. Chloe's eyes darted between us, her innocent facade cracking. The air grew thick with a palpable tension. They knew I wasn't bluffing. "You went through my phone?" My mom's voice was a shocked whisper. "That's a complete invasion of privacy, Liam." The irony was not lost on me. This was their last, desperate attempt at control. An invasion? I laughed, a hollow sound, like your plan to kick me out and give my house to Chloe. I held up my phone. The emails, the texts, the family trust where this house was an investment. It's all here. My mom's face hardened into a mask of pure rage. "We did it for your own good, you ungrateful, spoiled child. We sacrificed everything for you. We taught you to be independent, and this is how you repay us." Her voice rose to a furious scream. "You taught me nothing. You taught me that my worth was less than Chloe's. You taught me to earn everything while she had every single thing handed to her on a silver platter." I yelled back, my voice shaking with years of pent-up rage. The front door opened. My dad walked in, holding a pizza box. He took one look at the scene, the tear-streaked faces, my shaking hands, and his face fell. He knew what was happening. He dropped the pizza box to the floor. "You know exactly what's going on, Dad." I yelled, pointing at him. "You were a part of this. The family trust email, the plans to make me live in a little apartment. All of it. You were in on it from the start." My mom stared at my dad, a look of betrayal on her face. Chloe looked at the floor, tears streaming down her cheeks. The family, this picture-perfect facade, was shattering into a million pieces. The truth was out, and there was no hiding from it. "I'm done," I said, my voice now a whisper, but it echoed in the silent, shattered room. "You've crossed a line. There's nothing left for you here. This is over. Leave my house and never, ever come back. I'm calling the police if you don't." My mom started to protest, her voice breaking, but my dad put a firm hand on her shoulder, a rare, powerful gesture. He looked at me, a mix of defeat, sadness, and understanding in his eyes. He finally saw the man I had become, the man he created with his silence and complicity. My mom, defeated, snatched the copied key from her pocket and threw it on the ground. "We never wanted this," she spat. "You always make things difficult." They walked out, their heads low, leaving the pizza box a symbol of a past life they had destroyed behind them. I closed the door. The sound of the new lock clicking into place was the most beautiful sound in the world. It was a finality, a resolution I had craved for years. I was home. Finally. And I was alone. Finally. It was perfect in its completeness. The silence was so loud I could hear my own thoughts for the first time in years. The house was finally mine, a sanctuary cleansed of their judgment. I felt a pang of sadness, but mostly I felt a deep, profound sense of peace. My phone buzzed with an unexpected notification. It was a text message, not from my mom, not from Chloe. It was from my dad. The name on the screen sent a new wave of emotion through me, confusion, but also a flicker of hope. I opened the message. It was short. The pizza was a lie. I was there to drop off these. He had sent a picture. It was of a stack of old financial records and a handwritten will. My heart pounded in my chest. The will wasn't a new one. It was an old one. A document from before Chloe's birth, written to me. The records were all there, every single transaction. The basement rent, the college tuition, the apartment rent, everything. There was another text. "I'm sorry, Liam. I was a coward. I know it's not enough, but I wanted you to have the truth. It's all in the documents, and I've given a copy to my lawyer. Everything is in your name." I sank to the floor, my legs giving out. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of anger. They were tears of pure, unadulterated relief. My dad had seen me. He had finally, after all these years, stood up for me. His last message was the most powerful. "You were never a pawn in our game. You were the king all along. You just had to fight for your own kingdom. Don't let us touch it again. Ever." The betrayal from my mom and Chloe was a sharp pain. But the support from my dad was a balm, a quiet understanding. My revenge wasn't just about my home, it was about finally being seen. It was about finding my own ally. I looked at the documents in the photo, the evidence of their scheme, and my dad's quiet attempt to make it right. It was a secret history of my family, a history I was finally ready to face. The documents felt heavy in my hands. The old will, the financial records, the emails from the realtor. This wasn't just a story. This was hard evidence. My dad's silent plea for justice. I wasn't going to have a private confrontation again. My mom and Chloe had built their lives on a public facade. It was time for that facade to crumble. My revenge would be a public one, a digital reckoning. I went to my computer. As a coder, I knew how to make things viral. I created a simple, powerful post. A long, detailed explanation with photos of the documents attached. I was weaponizing the truth. I titled it, "My Family, My House, and Their Hidden Scheme." I didn't hold back. I detailed the story from the beginning, the cutout photo, the basement rent, the false promises, and the final, brutal betrayal. I hit publish. My hands were steady. The post was live. I then sent the link to every person I knew who was connected to my mom and Chloe. Their friends, their colleagues, everyone. The reactions were immediate. The comments flooded in. Shock, disbelief, support. "I can't believe this. I always thought your family was so perfect. I'm so sorry this happened to you, Liam." Chloe's Instagram comments went silent. Her followers began to turn on her, demanding an explanation. The narrative she had built, the one of the perfect, loving sister, was shattering. The public opinion was turning. My mom's friends, the same ones who always praised her, were now messaging me. Liam, is this true? I'm heartbroken to read this. I had no idea. The betrayal wasn't just my story anymore. It was now a public conversation. The truth was a weapon more powerful than any lie they could ever invent. My revenge wasn't about vengeance. It was about justice. It was about righting a wrong that had defined my entire life. I didn't feel rage anymore. I didn't feel sad. I just felt quiet, a deep, abiding quiet. The storm had passed, leaving behind a clear, empty space. A space for me to build a real life. The messages from my mom and Chloe were relentless now. They begged me to take the post down, to talk this out like a family. They were desperate, but I was unmoved. Their manipulation was a fire I had walked through. I was no longer afraid of their emotional blackmail. This was not a negotiation. This was a statement of fact and a declaration of my freedom. The final message from my mom was a sad, broken one. I don't know who you are anymore, Liam. And I smiled, a real smile, for the first time in years. Exactly, Mom. You don't. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a survivor. A fighter. My home wasn't just a house. It was a monument to my resilience. My own phoenix, rising from the ashes of their betrayal. The online firestorm was a whirlwind of comments and shares. My family's facade was gone. But I knew this was just the beginning. The real battle, the one with legal threats, was about to start. I was expecting it. A text came through. Liam, it's Robert, your father's attorney. He wants to meet you. We have documents he wanted you to have. He and I have been preparing for this for a long time. I met Robert at his office. The air was thick with seriousness. He was a true professional, his demeanor calm and reassuring. He laid a thick file on the table. Your father was a meticulous man. We have every receipt, every bank statement, every email. He meticulously documented all your contributions to the family, everything you paid for over the years, including the basement rent and tuition. Robert then pulled out a folded, yellowed piece of paper. This is a will from before Chloe's birth. Your father had it legally notarized. It states that all his assets, including any future properties, are to be solely inherited by you. Your father knew they would try to steal what was yours. He just didn't have the courage to stand up to your mom directly. So he prepared for this moment in his own quiet way. He was a silent defender. This was my dad's revenge. Not a public spectacle, but a quiet, powerful vindication. He had planned this for me for years, a ghost of a father finally showing his love and courage. I felt the weight of that gesture, old loyalty converted into proof. I knew I needed more. The legal system is complicated. I reached out to my old friend from law school, Noah. He had always been my rock. I texted him, "Hey Noah, need to talk. It's a long story." We met at a coffee shop. I laid out the documents and Noah's eyes widened. He read through the will, his face a mix of shock and fascination. "This is incredible, Liam," he said. "Your dad was playing a long game. The way he meticulously documented everything, it's a legal masterpiece. But your mom and Chloe won't give up easily." Noah and I developed a proactive legal strategy. We would file a restraining order to prevent them from contacting me. We would ensure a formal handover of the house was documented, making it legally impossible for them to claim it. This was a new kind of power, not an angry emotional outburst, but the calm, solid power of legal protection. My revenge was no longer about lashing out. It was about building my own fortress, brick by brick. The betrayal from my mom and Chloe was a sharp knife, but my dad's support and Noah's legal mind were a shield. Their attempts to reach me were desperate now: text messages, emails from burner accounts. They tried to threaten a lawsuit, but Noah just laughed. "They have nothing, Liam. They're just throwing dust in the air." The legal system was a different kind of war, a quiet one. I was prepared for it, with the help of my dad's foresight and my friend's expertise. My revenge was not just emotional, It was also legally and financially complete. The photo was just the first clue, a whisper. My mom's constant questions about my budget, my sister Chloe's odd comments about a baby shower location. It all felt off. My suspicion grew into a nagging dread. I knew I had to find proof. I waited until they were out of the house. My heart pounded. I went to my mom's laptop. It was a violation of trust, but I knew I had no other choice. My hands trembled. I found a folder. House plans. My blood ran cold. I clicked on it. Inside were floor plans of my new house, not as a home for me, but as a venue. It felt like a punch to the gut. I found emails with a wedding planner and a contractor. They weren't just planning a shower, they were planning a complete remodel. The emails discussed potential uses for the property after the event. There was a text chain with Chloe. He has no idea. Her words. She was a co-conspirator. My perfect little sister, the one I had always protected, was actively plotting against me. I found another email, this one from my dad to my mom. It was about a family trust for Chloe. My house was listed as an investment property to be managed for her benefit. This wasn't about a party. It was about a long con, a carefully constructed web of lies. They never intended for me to live here. They were just using my money to fund Chloe's future. I took screenshots of everything. The emails, the texts, the will, the proof was right there. I felt a cold resolve set in. I would not let them get away with this. Not after what they did. The screenshots were my shield, my proof, but a shield is useless if you don't use it. They thought I was naive. They thought I would crumble. They were wrong. It was time to show them that I was in control. The first step was symbolic. I drove to the hardware store and bought a new deadbolt. It was a simple lock, but its meaning was monumental. I was locking them out. For good. I got home and got to work. Unscrewing the old lock, a gift from my dad, felt like removing a piece of their control from my life. The new lock clicked into place with a satisfying thud. My house was finally mine. But a lock wasn't enough. I needed proof of their panic. I bought a set of wireless security cameras. I installed one facing the front door, one on the back patio, and one in the garage. I checked the live feed. A feeling of quiet power washed over me. I was watching them for once. I was no longer the one being observed or manipulated. I held all the cards. My phone buzzed. It was my mom. A text, Liam, we're coming over to look at the house. We want to show it to some friends for Chloe. I ignored it. I was in control of this narrative now. The live feed showed my mom and Chloe walking up to the front door. They were laughing. My mom pulled out her key, the one my dad had copied. Her smile was wide, full of false warmth. Then she put it in the lock. The key didn't turn. My mom's smile faltered. She tried again. The key didn't fit. Her laugh died in her throat. She looked at Chloe, and their eyes were filled with confusion. They knew something was wrong. Chloe pulled on the doorknob. Liam, are you there? She called out. Did you change the locks? Her voice was no longer sweet. It was sharp, laced with suspicion. She was starting to connect the dots. Then my mom saw it. The tiny, blinking light of the security camera I had installed above the door. Her eyes widened, a look of pure terror on her face. Chloe, he's watching us. He knows. They turned and ran, not with dignity, but in a panicked scurry. My mom's pristine facade was gone, replaced by a desperate, fleeing woman. Their confidence had been shattered in an instant. My phone started ringing off the hook. Texts, calls, messages from both of them. Liam, please, what is this? Just talk to us. I silenced my phone and put it down. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. I walked through my house, a new sense of peace in the air. The silence was no longer heavy with their expectations. It was filled with my own triumph. The house was mine, and the power was mine. My mom looked defeated. "This can't be real," she whispered. "Your father would never do this to us." Chloe was silent, her perfect facade gone. I was calm. The truth was my armor. My mom got up, her eyes pleading. "Liam, we're your family. We love you. We had a different plan. We can fix this." "A different plan?" I scoffed. "Your plan was to use my life savings to buy my house and give it to Chloe. You didn't tell me because you knew I would stop you. You never planned on me living here." Chloe spoke up, her voice a small whisper. "Liam, please. You don't understand. A baby needs a stable home. I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd be upset. This was for our future." "My future?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "You used my money, the money I worked for, the money I saved, to buy a house for my own father? You never cared about me, only what I could give you." My mom stood up, her eyes blazing. "We will contest the will. We have lawyers. You won't win this." Her voice was filled with a desperate, last-ditch threat. It was empty. I smiled. "You can try," I said. "My dad's lawyer has already filed the will. He and I have every financial record, every receipt. You have no legal standing. Your lies are documented." They both froze. The fight left them in a single breath. There was nothing more they could say. They were caught. Their perfect plan was over. Their perfect lives were over. I stood up. "Now you can leave. You are no longer welcome here. Ever. You can't contact me. I won't answer. Our relationship is over. It's done. Finished." They looked at me, not with anger, but with a horrifying emptiness. The boy they had manipulated was gone. In his place was a stranger, a man they had created, a man who saw right through them. Chloe started to cry, silent tears streaming down her face. She looked at me, and in her eyes I saw not just sadness, but a glimmer of regret. But it was too late, way too late. My mom got up and grabbed Chloe's arm. "Come on," she said, her voice a hollow rasp. She didn't look at me again. She couldn't. She walked out the door, with her perfect daughter. I walked to the door and closed it. The click of the lock was a final sound. The silence was so loud I could hear my own thoughts for the first time in years. The house was finally mine. The house was a symbol of my pain, a trophy of a war one never wanted to fight. I didn't want to live in it, haunted by their betrayal. So I sold it. I sold it and never looked back. The money from the sale felt different. It wasn't money used to pay off a house. It was a foundation, a clean slate. My own money for my own life, on my own terms. It was true freedom. I searched for a place that was the opposite of my old life. No sprawling suburbs, no manicured lawns. I chose a small town in Vermont. It was quiet. It was far away. It was perfect. I bought a small, rustic cabin on the edge of the woods. It was nothing like the modern house in the suburbs. It was small. It was humble. It felt like my own, truly my own, no one else's. I spent the first few days just listening to the birds, the wind in the trees, the quiet. The silence was no longer empty or painful. It was healing. It was a sound I had been missing my whole life. I found a job at a local coffee shop. It was a simple job, nothing like my old career. I learned to make lattes and talk to the locals. They were friendly. They were real. I was a person, not a wallet. My friend Noah came to visit. He was the only one who truly understood. We sat on the porch, drank beer, and talked. He didn't ask about my family. He just talked about my new life. It was a real friendship. One day, I received a letter. It was from Robert, my dad's lawyer. I hesitated, thinking it was something legal. But it was personal. A small, sealed envelope. Inside was a single photo of me as a boy, sitting with my dad, learning to change a tire. We were both smiling, honest, and easy. On the back of the photo was a note in my dad's handwriting, "Never forget the good times, son. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough. But I always loved you. Always." I cried. But it wasn't a cry of sadness or grief. It was a cry of release. My revenge wasn't about punishing them. It was about finding the truth. And in finding the truth, I found peace. After my family was gone, the silence was a bit deafening. But then, the kindness of strangers filled it. The lady at the coffee shop, the guy at the hardware store, they didn't know my story. They just knew me as Liam. I found myself laughing again, not a forced laugh, but a real one. My neighbor, an old farmer named George, taught me how to split firewood. He didn't ask for a thing in return. Just a simple thanks. My friend Noah drove all the way up from the city just to visit. We sat on my porch, and he told me a funny story about a case he was working on. It was a normal conversation. The best kind of conversation. I looked at him. "Noah," I said, "thank you for everything. You're more of a brother to me than anyone ever was." He just smiled, a quiet, understanding smile. That's what family is for, man. That's when it hit me. Family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up. It's about who has your back when no one else does. It's about people who love you for who you are, not for what you have. I started to see it everywhere. The old woman who taught me how to garden, the young couple who brought me a casserole. They were my family now, my new real family, my found family. The revenge felt so far away. It wasn't about anger or vengeance anymore. It was just a memory, a scar that reminded me of how far I had come. It was the darkest chapter of my life, but it led to the brightest. I walked outside and looked at the night sky. No streetlights, just stars. It was a vast, peaceful sky. My life was like that now. No more toxic lights or blinding facades, just the real, honest truth. The feeling of being used was finally gone. I was just Liam, a guy who lived in a cabin in Vermont, a guy with friends who cared about him, who didn't ask for anything in return. The simplicity was everything. I started a small workshop in my garage, building furniture from salvaged wood. It was a new skill, a new passion. I was building my life, literally, with my own two hands. The phone still rings sometimes. A call from an unknown number. I know who it is. I just let it ring. I don't feel anger anymore, just nothing. They are a part of a life that isn't mine anymore. They can't hurt me anymore. They can't manipulate me. The house, the money, the betrayal, none of it matters now. I have a home. I have friends. I have my life. And it's all real. Life in Vermont was simple, peaceful. My old life felt like a movie I had watched a long time ago. But a part of me, a small, curious part, still wondered what had happened to them. I got a text from an old friend from the city. She didn't know the whole story, but she knew enough. "Hey Liam, I saw something about your family. Are you okay?" she wrote. My heart sank. I knew what was coming. She sent a link to a local news article. The headline was harsh. "Real estate scandal. Family sells home after financial ruin." My mom and Chloe's names were right there. The details were a bitter kind of validation. The article explained that without my financial contributions and without the house as an asset, they had gone bankrupt. They were forced to sell their suburban home and move into a small rental apartment. The perfect life was over. There was a photo of them leaving the house. My mom looked haggard. Chloe was pale, her baby bumps showing. They weren't smiling. The fake warmth was gone. The facade truly broken. The article mentioned the baby shower. People who had been invited backed out, citing personal reasons. The word spread. Everyone knew. Their public reputation was destroyed. They were left with nothing. I didn't feel a sense of triumph. Not at all. I felt a quiet sadness. They lost everything not because of me, but because of their own choices. They chose to be selfish. They chose to be cruel. And this was the outcome. My dad's silent revenge was complete. He had known they would fail. He had known they would try to steal from me. He had left me the tools to build a new life, and them with nothing. The distance wasn't a wall of anger anymore. It was an honest distance, a boundary. I had a different life now, and they had theirs. A life they had built with lies, and a life they were now forced to live with the truth. I closed the browser on my phone. The screen went dark. And just like that, their lives, their struggles, their downfall, it was no longer my problem. The chapter was closed. Forever. After months of silence, my phone buzzed with an email. It was from Robert, my dad's lawyer. The subject line was official and chilling: update on the estate of your father. This wasn't about feelings. This was about facts. The email was brief. Based on the evidence you provided, the court has initiated legal proceedings against your mother and sister for financial misconduct and attempted fraud. The legal terms felt heavy, a final judgment passed by the system itself. There was no joy in this moment. No sense of victory. Just a quiet, solemn recognition that their actions had consequences. It wasn't my revenge anymore. It was justice. Cold, hard, and undeniable. The lawyer's note explained the specifics. My mother had faced fines and was banned from holding certain business positions. Chloe's attempts to secure the family trust were exposed, ruining her financial reputation. This was what it was all about. Not revenge, not anger, but accountability. For the first time, they were being held accountable for their greed and manipulation, not by me, but by the law. I thought about the night I found the emails, my hands shaking. That trembling had now been replaced by a quiet certitude. My actions had led to this. My father's faith in me had led to this. The news reports confirmed it. My family, who had built their lives on appearances, were now defined by their very real failures. The mask was off. The public facade they had so carefully constructed was gone forever. I deleted the email. It was the final click of the door. The final word in a very long, painful story. I was no longer a participant. I was a survivor, and I had a new chapter to write. The legal battle was over. The media frenzy faded. My old life felt like a ghost. I had spent so long fighting a war, but what I really needed was to build something. Something for myself, my own. I had learned to build. In my garage with salvaged wood, I built a simple chair. Then a table. Then, my neighbor asked me to build them a custom bench. It was my first real job. My first real client. I called my new venture Honest Woodworks. The name was a statement. It was a promise to myself. I would build things that were true. No hidden motives, no fake appearances. Just honest work. The first customer gave me a $50 deposit. It was a small amount, but it was the most meaningful money I had ever earned. It was a vote of confidence, a sign that I was worth something on my own. I worked tirelessly. I sanded wood until my fingers ached. I learned to use every tool. Every splinter, every nail, it was mine. No one could take this from me. No one could claim it was theirs. I sent a photo of the finished bench to Noah. He responded immediately with a single word: "Liam, you did it." Not we or us, just you. It was exactly what I needed to hear. I sat on the finished bench, the sun warm on my face. I thought about my old family, the endless drama, the lies, the constant need to prove myself. It was all so exhausting. It was all so fake. My triumph wasn't about their downfall. It was about this. It was about earning a living with my own hands. It was about building something honest and watching it come to life. It was a different kind of victory. I realized my dad didn't just give me the house to save it from them. He gave it to me so I could sell it, so I could use the money to start over, to find my own path, to find myself. I raised a glass of lemonade to the sky. To my dad, I whispered, "Thank you for giving me the tools to build a life. Not just a house, a life." And in that moment, the revenge was complete. People ask me if I feel good about my revenge. The truth is, that word, revenge, feels too small. It sounds like a triumph, a victory celebration. My journey wasn't about a celebration. The day I found the emails, I was filled with rage, a bitter, burning anger that had been simmering for years. That anger fueled me, and it got me through a lot. But anger is not a good home. It's a tool, not a place to live. My family lost everything. Their money, their reputation, their perfect facade. And yes, for a moment, that felt like justice, but it was a fleeting feeling. A short burst of satisfaction. The real victory came later. It came when I sold the house and bought this cabin. It came when I realized I could make my own way. It came when I found people who loved me, not for my money, not for my house. They always told me I needed them, that I couldn't survive without their guidance. But my father knew I could. He didn't just give me an asset, he gave me a way out. He gave me a chance at a real life. The revenge was just the beginning, the first step, the part of the story that had to happen to clear the way for the true ending, my happy ending, a peaceful ending, an honest ending. So what's the takeaway? Don't let your family define you. Don't let their expectations, their greed, or their lies poison your life. You have the power to walk away. You have the power to choose who you are. My family, they're a part of my story. But they're not the whole story. They are the chapter of betrayal. But I am the author of the rest of the book. And I'm writing a good one? My story is extreme. It's a full-on saga of family betrayal, silent revenge, and a new life built from the ashes. But the core emotions, they're not extreme at all. They're universal. Maybe you felt it, that creeping feeling that your family sees you as a bank, not a person. That they celebrate your success because of what it can give them, not because of what it means to you. If my story resonates, I want you to remember something. The first step is to recognize the pattern. The lies, the manipulations, the guilt trips, they are not normal. They are not a sign of love. For years, I believed I owed them everything. The house, the money, my loyalty. That's the biggest lie toxic families tell you. You are not an asset. You are a human being with a right to your own life. So here's my first piece of actionable advice. Set a boundary. Start small. Maybe it's saying no to a financial request. Maybe it's not answering a call when you're busy. You have a right to your time and your money. And don't be afraid to document things. I know it sounds cold, but it's what saved me. Screenshots of messages, records of transactions. It feels clinical, but it's your best defense against manipulation. Finally, remember this: you are not alone. My story is proof that you can break free. You can find your own family, a family that loves you without conditions. You just have to be brave enough to start. So, if this story hit home for you, hit that like button and subscribe. We're a community of people who've been through this, and we're here to support each other.